Okay, so what I want to talk about now, I want to talk about futures. So in this short video, I will explain what a future is. So there are many kinds of futures. We will talk about equity futures. So basically, it's a simple contract. For example, you're a buyer, and here's you're a seller, okay? And you sign a contract to buy a certain asset for a prescribed price in a well-defined point in the future. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a future contract to buy 1 year from now shares for Apple, where the price is $100 a share. And let's assume that you buy 50 shares. Okay? So you are signing the contract now between a buyer and a seller. 1 year from now, okay, you're obliged to execute the contract. So in this case, okay, the buyer is going to give the seller $5,000 because it's $100 per share times 50 shares, while the seller is going to deliver to the buyer 50 shares of Apple. Now, if a year from now, okay, the price of the share is $150, so who is going to make money, right? So basically, the buyer just gave the seller, okay, $5,000. He got 50 shares. So now each share is actually worth $150. So you go to the open market, you take the $150 times 50, because you can sell these 50 shares, you get $7,500. So overall, the buyer makes $2,500 in this scenario. Okay, so this actually happens if the price of the share a year from now is greater than the contract price, which is going to be $5,000. $100, sorry. So for example, if the price of the share is 110, right? How much money the buyer will make 1 year from now? Okay, so it's the same story. You take the 110, you multiply by 50, you get the $5,500. However, you gave to the seller $5,000, so your profit is $5,500 minus $5,000, which is $500. But it's not now, it's a year from now. Okay? So if this is if the stock is going to actually go up, right? A year from now, the stock is going to be worth more than $100. Okay? Now, what happens if, let's say, the stock worth $50 a year from now? Well, in this case, right, the seller will make money. Why? Well, the seller makes money because why? Because he gets $5,000 from the buyer. Because that's the price they agreed on, right? He needs to deliver 50 shares to the buyer, right? So he takes out of this 5,000, he takes 2,500. He buys 50 shares, right? And then the $2,500 he pockets. So he has a profit of $2,500. Now, if the stock price was not, let's say, 50, but 60, okay, it's going to be the same story. So once again, the seller gets the $5,000 from the buyer. He takes out of that $3,000, so it's 60 times 50, to buy the 50 shares. So what is his profit? His profit is 5,000 minus 3,000, which is 2,000. Okay. So if you are a seller of the futures contract, okay, if you are a seller of the futures contract, seller of future contract, you want the price to go down, the price of the stock to go down. If you're a buyer of the future contract, you're a buyer of the future contract, you want the price to go up. Okay? That's the crux of it. Now, how do you actually make money? Now, let's say that this is your timeline. So this is now, and this is 1 year from now. And I told you that the future contract is signed for the entire year. Now, let's say that you want to get rid of the contract in the middle. How do you do that? So if you're a buyer, okay, where you sign the contract here, now, and then the contract price is $100. Let's assume that after half a year, the same contract, so now it has maturity of only half a year, but it's still, it's still a contract which has another half a year. So here, okay, the same contract which has a half a year expiry, the price of the share of Apple is 120. Okay? So what the buyer can do at this point, okay, is to sell a contract for Apple with the same expiry, so basically half a year, because this is 6 months. Okay? And now watch what will happen okay, so the price now is $120. So what will happen at expiry? Okay, so this is our buyer. He's sandwiched in the middle because on the one hand, he's a buyer of a contract of $100. On the other hand, he's a seller for $120. So this is another guy here, right? And let's put this as black because this is our original seller. Okay? So what happens here? Well, this is very interesting because the buyer now needs to give the seller here 50 shares. Where does he get these 50 shares? He gets them from here. So he takes the 50 shares here, 50 shares of Apple, and he pushes them here. Now, what happens with the money that he gets, the cash? Well, here he needs to give $5,000, But because he's a seller here, he gets 120 times 50. So it's going to be $6,000. So it's $6,000. $6,000 minus $5,000, $1,000. Okay? So he profits $1,000. Okay? Now, if it's on the other hand, right? If you're a seller and you want to get out of the contract in this case, you just do it. You just buy the contract, right? So let's assume another scenario where you're a seller. Here's you're a seller. Okay, and originally you had a buyer here, and you say that you want to have $100. So, but here, right, for some reason, and we don't know what the reason is, you wanted to actually, you bought a contract with $120. So what happens now? Well, here, from the shares perspective, it's the same. Because here you need to deliver the 50 shares here. You get the 50 shares from here, right? 50 Apple shares. However, what happens with the money? Well, here you get your $5,000, but here you're a buyer, right? From here to here, you're a buyer. So you have to give $6,000. So you have $5,000 minus $6,000, $1,000 that you lose. Okay? Now, how do we have options on futures? So options on futures are basically options to enter into a contract with a prescribed price. So you can have either that you are a buyer of the contract, or you are a seller of the contract. Okay, and this prescribed price is going to be your strike. So for example, let's assume that you are signing a contract with somebody, that you have the option but not the obligation to enter into a futures contract here in the middle as a buyer. So you have basically, so the entire timeline here is 1 year. However, you are going to actually be in a contract only half a year. For this portion, right, you are like, you have the option. Come this point, you can decide whether you are going to, into the contract, you are going to you will realize your option or you will not realize your option, right? So let's look at this scenario. So let's look once again that this is basically an option on entering a contract with for an Apple, right, with $100 as a strike. Okay. So if you come here, okay, and you can see that the contract price now, the real contract price is $120 at this point in time, okay, you will of course, enter into this contract because here you have $100 as a strike. So now here you have 120, right? So now it's going to be, oh my God, I can enter into this contract. I can buy $100, okay? I can pay $100 for each contract, which will have $120, all right? And you can then immediately sell this contract. So then your profit for this guy will be 120 minus 100, which is going to be $20 contract. So this will be basically a good outcome for you. Now, what happens if you're a seller? If you signed, to have a seller contract. So here you will say, okay, I can sell it for $100, but the contract that I have, the actual contract outstanding is $120. Okay? So of course I will not actually sell something that I can sell for $100 if I can sell it for $120. So you will not enter this contract. On the other hand, right, if you're a seller, okay, and your contract, let's say, is $90, and you have $100, right? So that's what you are going to do. Instead of selling something for 90, you will sell something for 100. So of course you're going to actually exercise the option and enter the contract. So I hope that this actually clarifies what those options and futures are, so you guys will get some exercises of how to actually exercise these kind of things, and hopefully it will be enough for you to kind of understand it. Okay, thanks and have a great day. Bye.